Okay, this video was requested by Augustus David, and this is Milstein's version of Vitali Chaconne that I'm going to play a little bit for you, and along with this I'm going to explain where I'm coming from as far as the musicality is concerned. So you start out with just these very, very quiet chords in the piano, and I think they're in octaves. Okay, not quite. Now there's opening up. And I apologize, I don't know this piece very well, but I'll do the best I can. This is a very emotional piece, if anything. And this opening needs to be very contained. You can't start it out. Do you see how this is not appropriate for where we're starting? Because we're starting out with these chords that just are octaves and they start opening up, but you don't want it to be too much of a surprise or a shock. Think of this piece, as I understand it, in terms of a seed, and the seed throughout this piece, throughout all the variations that occur, grows into a tree eventually. And so as the seed is growing, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and say, oh, the seed is already this big if we haven't given it a chance to grow to that size, if that makes sense. So by the time you're halfway through this piece, you should only have a half-grown tree in terms of musicality. So when you start this off, don't overdo it. We're only a little seed. So when I'm talking about this piece being very emotional, it should also be very self-contained emotionally. So instead of it's more like this. Do you see what I'm doing here? Let me explain. I'm holding back. It's like I want to move my bow faster, but I can't because of the weight. The weight of this piece is holding me back. Particularly when you're, and this is a technical point, when you're changing your bows, don't change your bow too fast. You see what happens when you do it? It's shocking to the listener. It needs to sound like one continuous line. Not okay, so and then it goes on to a new variation. So now there's, in this very first passage, there's a B natural. Why do you suppose that's in there? I think the reason why is because it's giving a glimpse of what may occur later on in the piece, where we start out in G minor, and then there's a little bit of hope. But then immediately this hope is dashed, I guess, if you want to say that, by the B flats that occur afterwards. And it's back. Then we're back to the beginning of this piece, and then the next variation takes over. Now, in terms of this seed, you've got the seed starting out barely, and so when we get to the end of the seed, now maybe the stem is coming out, and this is where. So after this passage, this is just the seed, maybe getting itself rooted in the soil, okay, getting ready to grow, but not growing yet, until here. Okay, did you hear the piano? And then right after that, the violin copies that. Okay, so the piano starts off. Now we're handing a little bit off to the piano. Okay, I'm a little behind. But the piano starts off dum ba dum ba dum, and then the next measure, the violin goes da dum ba dum. Okay, and let's listen to this once. Now. Now back. And you hear that? So in the piano. So you've got the violin, and then it immediately hands off in that same measure, or something like that, in the piano part. And so it's a dialogue between the violin and the piano. This is something that you're going to have to work on when you're practicing on your own. You're going to have to work on hearing the piano part and interacting with it as though it was there. It's the same thing when you're performing and you're performing by yourself and you don't have an audience. You need to create the audience mentally and also create the piano mentally so that you can learn how to interact with these other two elements of a performance. So I love this part right here. It's almost like the seed is now growing a vine, and the vine has all these little sprouts coming out, these little branches and leaves coming out. So it comes out. Okay, and that maybe is the main stem. Could be little branches coming out. Okay, and then those could be the little leaves on the branches. So you got stem, branches, leaves, and you see how the notes are starting out as. This almost sounds like these are quarter notes, and then it goes to eighth notes, and then it goes to triplet eighth notes. So think of that in terms of a stem is a quarter note, and the branches are eighth notes, and then the little leaves are triplet eighths. So if we keep that analogy going, okay, so this could be little other stems. Maybe there are other seeds in this this area that are now starting to sprout. Now each of these seeds with stems have branches coming out, these eighth notes. And then suddenly all of the branches start sprouting leaves. Also, be very attentive to how Milstein is playing this. And what I'm trying to point out here is that you hear the you're hearing the melody, and what he's doing is he's emphasizing only the melody, and then the other notes just fall through. Also in that first measure, these C's, which are the higher notes, are being emphasized because they're kind of the reaching notes in here. The B flat is the root, and the C, which is the next note up, is reaching out. Right here in the next measure as well, the B flat. And in that last one, it was the A that was reaching out. So you're getting this feeling of again, upward progression in this idea with the seed and with all of these trees growing. So it's a progression. And what I want you to remember in the rest of this piece is that this progression continues. You never want to lose sight of the progression. And that alone will establish your musicality in this piece. And so let me just reiterate what we've talked about here. And pretty much the rest of the piece goes all along, unless there are any technical points that you want me to discuss. Think in terms of the very beginning is just a little seed, and as you go on, the speed of the notes dictates what part of this tree is growing. And also remember that in order to make it musical, there has to be something happening. It needs to be organic, and so you also need to remember or hear in your mind the piano part as well as feel the audience. And if you can do this, and this takes some time, you're going to have to do this in layers. You're probably going to have to spend one day thinking about the piano part, another day thinking about the audience, and another day yet thinking about the seed and where is it or where it is in its growth during the piece. Where does this measure correspond in terms of how big the tree has grown? And with that in mind, you should have a very good idea of how this should be played. And think it through. Make sure that it's well thought through, and listen to all of these recordings, and I can guarantee you that your playing will improve because of this mental preparation.